All right, episode 3 of the Vodcast.
Oh yeah, I forgot that's what we're calling it.
If we ever come up with a better name, we will just fix that in post.
Sure.
Just change it halfway through at some point. Okay, so what we're doing this bi-week? Fortnight? Is that what it... I think it is actually a fortnight.
Huh? I think it's been a month. Is that what you...
It's been a while since recording,
Okay.
but the episode
I see.
was 2 weeks ago.
Sure. Yes, I definitely watched it. It's definitely not in my backlog.
But this week, what we're doing are top 5 generic cards, not equipment, generic actions, not attack action, or attack actions, not attack actions, items, instance, etc., but not equipment.
Top 5?
Top 10. You're right. Top 10. Top 10 generic cards. And we're going to start and go from 10 to the best, the 1, and we will also probably mention a couple of honorable mentions that some of us may have originally put on the list and then realized maybe did not deserve to be on the list, although maybe some cards also made the list that arguably I am a little bit crazy about putting on the list, but you know.
Like number 10.
Like number 10, which our 10th, so our worst of the best, is Slogism, because I insist that this card is playable. And it's good in a couple of decks.
It is a card, and you can play it.
So Slogism is an action card. 3 cost to play. The one you're going to play is the pitch for 3 blue one, which would say that the next attack action that costs 2 or more gains +4. So what this is good in, since I know I'm the one who put it on this list, so I will campaign for it, is it's good in Viscerai because it's a non-attack action with Go Again that pumps your next attack. So it does all the good Viscerai things. It turns on Nebula Blade. It lets him make a rune chant. And a lot of his attacks do technically have a cost of usually 3 with Rune Flash and Amplify the Arknight. And while they will almost always cost less than that, they do still count towards Goliath Gauntlet and Slogism. So that's probably the best deck for it. You probably can run it in Brute too, although it is very expensive at that point. You probably can run it in those kind of decks. So I think that's why it deserves its spot here.
It's also a combo card. It combos with...
Yes, if you play Regurgitating Slug.
Yes, that's it. The 6 cost...
and who knows, maybe that's further up this list. Maybe we think Regurgitating Slug is playable.
I think I had it in one deck, maybe, or maybe I cut it. I don't remember.
I think you thought about playing it in Levia, and I don't think it ended up in Levia.
Probably not, because it costs 6.
I don't think it costs 6, but it costs 6 for the combo.
Maybe that's... No, I think it costs 6.
3 for Regurgitating Slug.
Maybe.
So it's 3 for Slogism, and then 3 for Regurgitating Slug if you're playing them both in the same turn.
What does it do again?
Regurgitating Slog banishes Slogism from your graveyard to gain Dominate. So the combo with it is to play Slogism.
Maybe it hits
to
for
pump
6.
the Regurgitating. It does.
Okay, that's
the red Regurgitating Slug hits for 6. So the combo is to play like blue Slogism, give it +4, then play Regurgitating Slug, banish the blue Slogism, swing for 10 with Dominate.
It's not as bad as I thought it was.
It's not. It's not. Actually, it's probably the closest to playable out of all of the combo cards. I would probably play that over Nimblism, Nimble Strike.
Really?
In a Brute deck. In a Brute deck.
Sure.
Because Regurgitating Slug has the 6 power. So it fits 6 power matters.
Yeah, I guess.
Slogism's also good in that deck, so it's probably the most playable because you could argue for playing it in a Brute. And maybe if we built something like Rhinar, he might be desperate enough. But that's number 10. Number 9, we have Scar for a Scar, which is a 0 cost action. You're most likely going to play red. Maybe you play other colors too, but red is going to be the best one because it's for 0 cost, pitch 1, swing for 4, and if you have less health than your opponent, it gains Go Again.
Yep.
And it blocks for 3.
Which is useful.
It is useful, especially in that Briar deck we built in episode 1.
Uh-huh.
But originally I was not going to put this on the list, but then I realized it actually deserves to be in more decks than I've put them in, and probably right after recording, I'm going to be putting them in my Kano deck.
Which makes sense, because you start off...
You start with less health, and you're
15.
probably going to stay that way if you're a Kano player.
Yep.
And I do have an attack action in that deck. Possibly I should run more, because Commoner Wizard's not particularly great.
Another deck that starts with less health?
No. Not at common. Not at common.
I'm probably just thinking of less intellect.
Well, that's also not at common. But Data Doll starts with 3 intellect, and Benji starts with 18 health.
18?
Yes.
That's weird.
Also, the new wizard that's coming out, that definitely was revealed before this episode, that wizard also has 18.
Okay, I didn't pay attention to that. But,
yeah.
But so she has mythic.
Yes.
We don't care.
Majestic.
What? Shut up. Marble. One of these days.
But Scar for a Scar, it's also just like, it's a generally great card because it's a 0-cost attack that swings for 4, so it's kind of hard to block.
Yep.
And it's not that hard to give it go again, so you could get away with it in more decks, but it really is just like the Kano and the Briar deck that like actively want it, which is why it's only 9th.
And I mean, you could also run it in a Katsu deck. It just would be...
Yeah, I think you could get away with it in Katsu.
Yeah. It would just be... It would throw off the game. Well, it depends on how you build it, really.
Yes.
But it would... It could play to his ability, so if you're running it around his ability instead of combos, it would play better.
Yeah, it pitches well for Katsu, and in theory, I mean, like, you could end up lower health fairly easily if you're going super aggressive with him, and not blocking that often. You probably could get away with it with Go Again sometimes, and a 0-cost 4 power with Go Again. Not bad. Yeah. Not bad. Which, you know, speaking of Ninja, that actually is a very, very great lead-in to number 8 on the list.
It's almost like I did it on purpose. But I didn't.
And that is Push the Point, which it's a 1-cost card, pitches for 1 in this case, because you're only really going to play the red version, which is going to be the case for pretty much all the ones on this list.
Too expensive for my Katsu blood.
I don't know. It's a 1-cost. Pitches for 1. You know, it swings for 4.
I'm gonna take that back because I have Open the Center in my deck, which costs 2. Yes. I think.
Yes.
So
but
I retract that.
If the last attack on the chain hit, this gets +2. So in theory, it's a 1-cost 6 damage card. It doesn't go into a lot of decks, but the decks it does go into, it's amazing in, specifically like Ira, and I would argue it would be great in Katsu. But
you could build it in there.
Yeah. I mean, and again, you only run the red one. But I mean, like, it's a 1-cost that deals most likely 6 damage in a Ninja deck. So it's really, really good in Ninja. You do have to use that as the chain finisher, though, because it doesn't have Go Again.
You know, I don't know what I'm talking about, because I had Brandish in my deck, and that's 1-cost, and it's not as good.
Yes, this is better than Brandish. So, yes, 100%.
But I might have...
I do still have Brandish in Dorinthia, though.
I forget if we retconned it so it doesn't have Brandish in it.
I think we did get rid of it. I think when we went through the deck list and tweaked it, I think we took out Brandish.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. And I don't believe we Push the Point in, but I think it was like on the cutting floor. Like, it was very close.
It's possible I could retcon it again and put
Push the Point in. You might. I think you could get away with it, and it definitely is. It's really good in Ira. Ira loves it because Ira doesn't have the same like kind of cost restriction aspect.
Yeah.
And so she really is just looking to make insane combat chains, and that works really well for that. Now, up from there, in a similar theme of cards that don't go into a lot of decks, but are really, really good in the decks they go into.
A little controversial.
This is number 7 on the list, Ravenous Rabble, the 0-cost, pitch for 1, 5-power attack, but when you attack with it, you flip the top card of your deck, and it gets -X power equal to whatever the pitch value of that card is, and then it also already has Go Again on it.
Exactly.
Now, you were the one that really fought to have this on the list, so...
well, I didn't fight to have it. I just, I presented it, and you're like, okay.
Well, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
But
it goes really well into the Briar deck, and it's a 0 cost, so it works insane, especially in that Briar deck.
Yep. And you did think it could fit into a Katsu deck too, which
it's possible. Yeah. But considering we have like most, if not all, reds in that Briar deck,
yep,
it meant that it was.
It's almost always a 4-power 0 cost with Go Again.
Except for when we hit those seldom yellows and those rare blues, which are really unfortunate. Because that has happened.
Whereas, like, in the Katsu deck, you are more likely to hit blues and yellows. Yeah. But, to be fair, in a Katsu deck, even a 2-power 0 cost with Go Again is not too bad, because you can always, like, it turns on the Kodachis, it lets you fetch things.
I mean, you could build it so it's more red heavy anyways, if you really wanted to.
And so it is probably easier to get into Katsu than, like, Scar for Scar is, ironically, but I think there is a little bit of more argument for that. But especially in the Briar, or if you try to build, like, Lexi Briar, where you just take the same list and throw it into Lexi, you would also run this.
Yeah.
Which is not a really good deck, I have a feeling, but...
Well, it's a gimped version of the Briar deck.
I think so. I don't think the Buzz Bolts and Dazzling Crescendos really make up the difference.
I mean, we haven't tried it. It could
be
even better than the Lexi Tempo deck.
I highly doubt it, but it could be.
I also highly doubt it. Considering how well... I don't know if you guys have seen it, how well that Lexi deck has done.
Yeah. And I mean, we have played it outside of recordings too, and it has done pretty well in those. It did better than... It exceeded my expectations. But...
It felt fun, too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because it's a little more proactive than some control decks can be. Mm-hmm. Which I guess why it's a Tempo deck. And then number 6 on the list, we do have Pummel, because this does not go into a ton of decks. It does go into more decks than Ravenous Rabble does. And in the decks that it does go in, it is absolutely insane. And so what it does, it is a 2-cost, pitch for anywhere between 1 and 3, because you actually could run many different colors of Pummel, because it does cost a fair bit, so you kind of do sometimes need to do that. And at the worst, it's only +2, so like the blue one's actually very playable. The red one's +4, which is really, really good, which it gives that to a club or hammer attack, or an attack that costs 2 or greater. And if you use it on an attack that costs 2 or greater, it also gains, if that attack hits, the person has to discard a card, which is crazy good in a Guardian deck, and also pretty good in a Brute deck, where you can actually get both sides of it, but you're almost always going to use it on the attack action.
It's probably something I should put in that Levia deck, which is kind of crap anyways. So it needs fixing.
I think that's as sad as it is. I think that's a Levia thing. Levy is just so close to being good, and yet so far.
Well,
as a hero in general,
I've never put too much effort into that Levia deck. It was just sort of thrown together.
Yeah, so it probably could be optimized a little bit better, but it's also a brute, and I like brutes, but I don't know if we've ever seen brute win. I don't think we have. I think we've played a lot of brute games,
You might be correct.
I think we played brute twice in Welcome to Wrath, right?
The only way that brute can win is against another brute.
I think if I remember correctly, we played we played Reinar in one of Welcome to Wrath. Yeah. And then you played Katsu in the second sealed.
Probably. And
then we played 2 Levia games in Monarch sealed. And which both have gone out now. Okay, we're good. We're good. We played the Precon deck twice. So that's 5 games of Brute and never won. Oh, plus the one against Dorinthia, which has gone live as well, too. So it's 6 games, 0 wins. That's rough. All right, I have to build Reinar just to see if we can find the miracle win. But obviously, Pummel is good in those decks.
Do you think Reinar can do
it? No, but I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try it.
Of course.
I mean, at least he won't kill himself like Levia tends to.
True. So you're saying he's more balanced deck.
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. But there's that. And then obviously the Guardian decks, where it's actually really, really, really good, because the Guardian decks tend to be more control-oriented, so getting that extra discard is just super sweet.
Which makes sense, yep.
Yeah. Which we do still need to play Bravo too, but we'll get there. See what Everfest brings in.
Is it if it hits, they discard?
Yes.
Okay.
But Guardian has a lot of ways to make it hit, because it has a lot of ways to gain Dominate. Yeah, I mean, Bravo himself actually gives things Dominate, so that's his one big thing over Oldhim, whereas Oldhim's abilities are not quite as good in Commoner. But
well, one good part is like that also works for Brute is if you're using that,
yeah,
they'll probably try to overblock for it.
that's true. That's true. And it pumps, so I mean, like, it's going to be even harder to overblock it. Mm-hmm. But that's why it makes 6 just outside of the top 5, the creme de la creme, which is really funny when we think about what number 5 will be. This card is insane. It is amazing, and that is Whispers of the Oracle.
Yep.
The 0 cost, non-attack action that, depending on whether you use blue or red, it opts anywhere between 2 to 4, and then it has Go Again.
Yes, this is a controversial card because it's a card that's put in lots of decks.
Yep.
But it's also not like a great card.
Yeah, you're never really going to cast it and be like,
oh!
Not even in, like, Kano.
But it's a very stable card.
Exactly. And the nice thing is, it's a 0 cost non-attack action, which makes it really good in the Rune Blades.
Right.
The Rune Blades love it, and that's why it goes into all of them. The red ones in Briar, the blue ones are in Viserai and Chain. And then it also is relevant. I don't know if Azalea runs it, but Kano definitely does, because both of them care about what's on top of the deck. So it works really well in them.
I think it can work in Katsu.
It can. Although you tend to have better attacks available to you. And you're not really looking for...
I'm just thinking of, like, trying to set up next turns.
Yeah. You just have to use it before you start your chain. Or at the end of your chain.
Right.
Because otherwise it'll break it. But
and then does it work in Dash?
It could work in Dash, but you're usually better off not running non-mechanologist cards.
Right, but you could fix your next turn. Or
yes, you can make sure you're
boost.
boosting cards that you don't care to lose, and that you're keeping the cards you do want.
Right.
And they do also kind of help themselves in the sense of making sure you're not boosting a Whispers.
Right.
But it's generally just not worth the extra hoops to jump through.
Right.
Which is the same with the pump spells too, why you tend to run. Because you have Locked and Loaded, which sort of does the same thing.
But
although
still,
not quite as good.
But still, it works great in Rune Blades.
Yep. And in Kano. Those are the big decks that really, really love it. It's like all 3 Rune Blades and Kano, because Kano does really, really care about what's on top of the deck. And you can run the blue one, so it pitches to pay for Kano's ability.
But who really likes Kano, anyways?
Oof. Man.
Speaking of Kano...
One of these days I'm going to tell you we're playing Commoner, and I'm going to shuffle up my actual competitive Kano deck and be like, yes, here we go. Here's my 20 damage Chain Lightning.
Speaking of Kano, the next card on our list has absolutely nothing to do with him.
That is true, but it has a lot to do with the Rune Blades again, which is number 4, Come to Fight. You're only really running the red on this, so it's a 1 cost, pitch for 1. Your next attack action card gets +3, and that's it. It also blocks for 3, which makes it better than the other similar effects, but otherwise it's just +3 to your next attack for 1, and it has Go Again on it already.
A very generic card again. However, it is
this
very
one does
versatile.
do a lot more.
Yes.
And this one does have more moments than Whispers, where you're like, oh my god. Because you're like, wow, I just did a ton of damage. So this does see play in a number of decks.
That's one of those things where if you see it on the opponent's turn, you're just like, uh-oh.
Uh-oh, yeah. It's very scary when you see them play it, because you're like, oh no, this goes poorly for me. Primarily where it's probably best is like in Viscerai and Runeblade, and it's because it's basically your second pump spell effect. We won't talk about what your first one is. That comes later. No spoilers here, but Come to Fight is like your second pump spell effect where it's a non-attack action that has Go Again, so it does all of the sweet things that Runeblades care about, and it gives +3, which is sweet. I also do run it in Prism because I value it over, like, Foresight is worse because it's really not generally, you usually don't really care about opt, like, and that's why with Whispers, it's really just about having a non-attack action that has Go Again that pitches well.
Right.
Whereas you do use it in decks that do care about opt, like Wizard, but otherwise opting is only really good to Wizard in Azalea, so Foresight's opt if you play it from Arsenal, it's hard to pull off. And it's not that great. So Come to Fight is better because it blocks for more. But with Prism, you don't want something like a replacement effect where it puts it on the bottom of your deck because your attacks all have those already. They either go into your soul or they go into your deck or etc. So it would be redundant or would replace an effect that you would actually rather have. So in Prism, I prefer Come to Fight because I do want the pump spell for my attacks, but I don't want to do anything else. And it does see some play in a couple of decks where that is the case. Now, number 3 on the list, the best attack reaction that is a generic Razor Reflex.
Yep.
It's just more prevalent than Pummel, which makes it better, and it costs less than Pummel does.
Yes, it does. What's it?
It's a 1 cost. It is a 1 cost.
Well,
Pummel is a 2 cost.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
So Razor Reflex, 1 cost. You actually can play a number of different colors. You're probably not going to play blue, but you do see yellow and red, which gives +2 to +3 to either sword or dagger attacks, or attack actions that cost 1 or less. And if you use it on them, it also gains Go Again, which is actually the better part of Razor Reflex. You do run it in Dorinthia because the red one is a very well-costed pump spell.
Right.
That you do add attack reaction speed, which Dorinthia loves. But it's really, really good in Runeblade.
So all swords and daggers, basically.
It's just not good in Briar.
It should be in that deck.
Yes, because it also sees play in Ninja where you have the daggers.
Exactly.
Because the Ninja also has a bunch of things you'd love to give Go Again. And also has a number of on-hit effects where having that attack reaction pump is really, really good.
Yep.
So,
see, it's good for, like, if you don't have the proper combos in a ninja deck, you can give one side a combo and then just do something else.
Or like if you're running things like Push the Point, and if you're running the one you run in Katsu, the Soul Beat Strike, that one has to hit to gain Go Again.
That's right.
So it combos really well with them. So it's great in Ninja for all those things. It's really good in Runeblade because for a lot of them, you do have cards like Meet and Greet and things like that like, if you can't get Go Again through arcane damage, you can give it to it through this.
Right.
Or like, especially with Chain, where you run the Snapdragon Scalers. And ironically, I run Snapdragon Scalers in Viscerai too, because he really does go like 50-50 on high cost and low cost attack actions. So Razor Reflex is great for giving that Go Again, so you can do multiple things with it. It's just not as great in Briar.
Right.
Because Briar doesn't want to pay 1.
1 is too expensive.
Yep, as ironic as that is. But since it does see play in so many different heroes, Viscerai, Chain, Katsu, Ira, Dorinthia, that's 5 heroes right there. So it really is just one of the best generic cards you could play in a commoner deck.
However, it's not as good as number 2 on the list.
It is not. That is a Warmongers Recital. 1 mana, +3, only blocks for 2, unlike Come to Fight, but it does have that if the attack hits, that attack goes onto the bottom of your deck. Why do we prefer this one?
Because it cycles back into your deck.
Yep. Don't run out of cards.
You can never run out of cards.
So we mentioned that Come to Fight was your second copy of a +3 for 1 effect in your Runeblade decks. this is your first copy.
Yep.
Because if you're going to have a card or a deck that's going to have pump spells in it, you're running Warmongers Recital.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception of Prism. And honestly, I can't remember. I may still run it in Prism. But like generally speaking, that's where the Warmongers tacked on part is at its worst. Is because replacement effects you don't really want in Prism, because Prism all has like these great on-hit effects. Same would be for Bolton too.
You know, it might not go in Lexi deck.
It might not go into Lexi deck. Actually, it doesn't go into Lexi deck, because you really only have room for one effect, and Lexi has Overflex.
Right.
And blue Overflex gives almost as much as red Warmongers does.
And it takes away from the arrow cards or the elemental cards that you would have. However, that's not a negative point to Warmongers. That's just a situational case. And
Warmongers does still go into, like, Briar runs it as well. Mm-hmm. Like, you definitely run in Briar. And you absolutely can run this in a Brute deck. Mm-hmm. Like, you can definitely put this with Brute cards. You can do it with Guardian cards. I personally don't with Guardian because I value the effects that their auras give more.
I could see that.
But you could definitely play Warmongers in that deck.
Yeah, again, that's situational.
And you probably do put them into Brute decks, because Brutes do have, like, while I've talked about how good Slogism and Pumble are as pump spells, Warmonger is cheap. It's just really cheap.
Yep.
So it is still good to put into those decks, because you can pump it +3 for only 1, which makes it much, much easier to pull off doing both. I feel like we've used it in other decks too. Like, you probably can put it in Bolton. It's not necessarily amazing in Bolton.
Yeah,
but
I can see it in
You probably can. I mean, it is the best pump spell. Like, you probably run that and come to fight in Rune Blades, but like Briar, we could only choose one, and we chose Warmongers for a reason. Because it's always good to fill your deck back up.
Even outside commoners, it's
yes. Yep.
It can be run in
a number of Ultimate Pit Fighter decks. Mm-hmm. I don't think I have come to fight in Cavdane, but I'm almost certain I have Warmongers in the normal non-commoner only, though semi-budget Cavdane deck that I have. So it really is one of the best generic cards. One of.
But there can only be one. Number one.
And this was the first generic card that both of us mentioned when we talked about this list.
Yep.
What is it?
It's Lead the Charge.
Yep. It is the 0-cost, non-attack action with Go Again that says whenever you play the next card that costs X or greater, I believe. I believe it is X or greater. Yes.
Yeah.
Is X or greater, where the red is 0 or greater, the blue is 2 or greater. When you play it, you gain 1 action point. And this is all on a 0-cost, non-attack action that already has Go Again on it.
Yep.
Which means it is insane in so many decks, and you can play all 3 colors. Like, there are decks that run the pitch 3. Mm-hmm. Like, there are those decks. I think I have it in Wizard, for example. I have the blue one because it pitches to pay for Kano's ability. It can be used off Kano's ability, although not really great usually, but it can pitch for the Kano ability, and most of Kano's abilities get hit by it, like Voltic Bolt costs 2 or more. So there's a lot of good things you can use it with. So I think I do have the blue one in that.
And it's phenomenal in all the Rune Blades because it triggers that non-attack action clause that they...
Not so much the blue one, but yes. But yes, it does. It triggers that non-attack action. So, how many do you have in Chain?
I don't... It might...
Do you have 4?
I think it's 4.
There's a lot of decks we put 4 into. Yeah, probably not. Chain can't use the blue one too much.
No.
Which is why, like, you still ran all 6 Seeds of Agony, but... Well, that was, like, or less, wasn't it? Or something like that? I don't know.
I know there's red.
I can't remember.
There's definitely red.
Yeah.
But you ran all yellow.
6. So it was like... But you're talking about Lead the Charge. Yeah.
Obviously, there was all...
Yep. And then Viscerai, I
back in the day.
I think Viscerai only ran the 4, but if I redid the deck, which it definitely needs to be redone, I could actually run all 6 in that for the same argument for all the other things that are like 2 costs or greater. I probably could run the blue. So it's insane in that. I think we put 4 copies of it in Lexi. I think we do have yellow and maybe red. Oh, it would have to be red. Red is definitely in there.
Yeah,
and I
there's
think
red
yellow.
and I think there is yellow. Yeah.
Yep. So we got 4 in there.
Mm-hmm.
The Briar deck has a bunch. Chain has a bunch. Viscerai has a bunch. I have them in Cano. I can't remember if the blue one's in there or if it's the other ones. Like, it might be yellow because I think Scalding Rain might cost 1. So, but there's some number in there. You don't run it in Ninja because everything already has Go again, but I feel like we run it in Brute too. I feel like you may have some copies in Levia just so you can potentially do 2 things a turn. Because when she does get to do 2 things a turn, it does get a little bit broken.
Yep.
Don't run it in Dorinthia because it doesn't affect weapons. But I mean, it's just so good.
It doesn't affect equipment either, right?
Yeah, so it doesn't work off
unfortunate.
of it only does attack actions, but there's so many decks that are built around those.
Well, it's not attack actions, or is it?
Like, you probably use it in both Rangers too. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah, oh, you're right. It's not attack actions. It's your next action card. Yes, because it does work in Wizard with Cano. So it's just without a doubt the best generic card.
It is.
Because it's amazing when you can use it. It costs 0, so like even there's times you just play Lead the Charge, you can't even use the action point, but you're just triggering your Rune Blade stuff. Yep. And then in the Rangers, it's like one of your most reliable ways to do multiple things a turn.
Yep.
So it's so good. It's so good. I have it in Prism too. I forgot about it. It's in Prism as well.
Of course.
Because all of your things are so cheap. So if you can find a way to get multiple action cards, I mean, like, I'm so hurting for multiple actions in Prism that I'm running Time Skippers, I think. Yeah, Time Skippers. I run it in her and Oldhim. It might actually have them in Oldhim too.
Odd.
Yeah, well, it's because in both of them, like, in Prism, I run Time Skippers because I can probably pay the 3 for it and still be able to pay for my attacks because they all cost 1.
That makes sense.
And then in Oldhim, it's all pitch 3s. Yep. The whole deck is like pitch 3s, so I could probably pay for Time Skippers and my expensive stuff. But yeah, it's such a good card. I guess we should talk about some of our honorable mentions, though, because some people will probably look at our list and be like, you're crazy. What about Fate Foreseen and Kanjo? Which Fate Foreseen is one of the ones that originally was on my list, and I begrudgingly kicked it off the list, because it really is only playable in Cano, and you're still not playing it and being like, oh my god, this is amazing! But, like, it is really, really good in the Cano deck, because you can block with it, opt a couple of cards and see, can I go off right now on my opponent's turn? And that's one of the best things, is you can kind of like play with your deck and see that. So you're like, do I go defensive and block the rest of these attacks, or do I actually kill my opponent in response to his attacks? So it is nuts in a deck like that, but it's only nuts in a deck like that, which...
I think I had it in one deck before.
Great. Yeah.
I don't remember what for, though.
Generally speaking, though, it's considered that Sink Below is the better one because that lets you put a card from your hand into your deck and draw a new one.
Right.
So it lets you kind of do the Hope Merchant.
That's at the bottom of the deck, though, right?
Well, you put a card on the bottom, like from your hand, and then you draw a card, I think.
Okay.
It's something like, it either does that or you shuffle a card into your deck and draw a new one.
And what's Rise Above?
Rise Above is bad. Rise Above is bad. Also, okay. I think it's a rare, funny enough. That's the one where you can put a card from your hand on top of your deck to make it free. Otherwise, it costs 2. And it blocks for the same amount that the 0 cost block for.
Of course.
Yep. And then another honorable mention
that
was the
one
other
was
0
not
cost
a...
one. Yeah, Rise Above, not great. But Springboard Somersault, that is one of the better... Like, so I actually have never put Sink Below into any of my commoner decks. Even though it does see a decent bit of play in Classic Constructed, I personally think Springboard Somersault is a better one because it can block for 4 if it comes out of the arsenal, but it pitches for 2 instead of 1, so it's less punishing to put in your deck.
Yep.
Because you want the 0 cost block 4 effect, but... if you put too many of them in, and oftentimes you don't even get the 2 into your deck, because if you're not in a matchup where defense reactions are good, it hurts a lot.
Right.
So, Springboard Somersault gets around that a bit, because if you're in a matchup where you don't care, you can always pitch it for 2, and get to do a lot of things. So that's why it's in my Dorinthia deck, and my Prism deck.
And you don't want it in a deck that runs primarily off of the arsenal.
Yes, you don't want springboarded in Ranger. It is very bad. Yes, because you don't want those just arsenal effects.
Clogs up unless you're running like the rare bow or was it Majestic? The one that gives you 2 spots.
Oh, 2 spots you can get away with a bit more. Yes, but obviously that doesn't help us in Commoner Blitz. But and to be fair, there is actually one arsenal effect that is really good in Ranger, and that is Pulling Blast, because you want the ice card anyways.
Yes,
and you can always flip it to Lexi to give that Frostbite token, and then play it from the arsenal to give your next arrow attack dominate potentially, and also cycle a card. But good. Aside from that, Ranger normally doesn't want any of those arsenal cards.
Of course not.
But is there any other... You had talked about Nimblism being on the list, which it is really, really good in Briar. But
should we put... Oh, wait, no, never mind.
I think Slogism beats Nimblism just because there's slightly more decks you could put it in.
Yeah, I could see that.
And
same with, like, Belittle and
Yes, and Minnowism. You probably don't run Belittle in too much, but Nimblism you would. Flock of the Featherwalkers, I talked about putting in a deck once, but it didn't even make the cut in that deck. I did run Cadaverous Contraband in Cano, which I'm almost certainly going to be replacing the second we finish recording this with Scar for Scar, because it is just better. Brandish, I've played in Dorinthia. You played it in Ninja at one point.
Yep.
It's not awful in Ninja. It's just not really that great.
It didn't work out that well for me.
Yeah. Because it doesn't synergize with Katsu because it costs 1. It does already have Go again, but like also pumping your Kadachis aren't that big. Where it's good in Dorinthia because you do want your weapon to hit hard, so that extra bonus can sometimes matter. Or force them to block the Brandish to not give you that bonus, which means they have less blocks for the Dawnblade. Other than that, I mean, that was kind of the big attacks that like actually see play and are good. Lunging press as an attack reaction is like just not good enough. Like it could be good in Ninja, where you do have on it hit effects that matter, but you usually don't have enough space for it in the deck, and so you can only really run Razor Reflex or that. And Razor Reflex usually does more than Lunging Press does, because the red and the yellow all pump for more than Lunging Press does.
What's that card that I think it either puts stuff from the graveyard into the banish?
Are you talking about the instant one? The Memorial Ground?
No, not a Memorial Ground.
Oh, okay. Because that one is actually, it's just close to playable in things like Ranger, for example.
Yeah, it is a 0 cost.
It's a 0 cost, and it puts an attack action from your graveyard to the top of your deck that costs somewhere between 0 to 2 or less.
The one that I'm thinking of costs 2. It's the one that I have in my Levia deck. I can't remember what it's called.
Is it a shadow card?
Yep.
Okay, so it's not a generic one. It's a shadow card.
Oh, yeah.
You're thinking Spew
Never
Shadows.
mind.
You're thinking
Spew Shadows. Yep.
That'll have to be another one. Our top 10 Shadow and Light cards.
It's sure.
Our top 10 Shadow, Light, and Elemental cards.
It's not that great of a card. It's just useful.
Yeah, I think in Commoner it's a lot better
Memorial
because
Ground
you're kind of struggling for those effects.
I feel like Memorial Ground is actually more useful.
It could be, although we do see Spew Shadows in more decks than we see Memorial Ground.
True.
But Memorial Ground is close, especially with Ranger, because like most of their attack actions cost 1 or less, so you can actually run the yellow to blue one almost.
Right.
So, but it's just not good enough, and it blocks for nothing.
Yep.
So that is always a risk with instants. But that's our top 10 list. So
take it or leave it.
If you agree, disagree, whatever, post it in the comments. We'd love to hear what other people think, what kind of cards they're having success with and running in these generic lists. Obviously, the Briar deck starts opening up so much more possibility for generics because it does run so many 0-cost generics, like the Scar for Scar and the Ravenous Rabble, but certainly there might be some other decks where you see those 0 costs and other random generics getting into things. Certainly there's a lot of generics that have the 6 power or more, which is great for Brute, but not as great in any other deck. And we just don't play enough Brute for us to really put it into our top 10, probably.
No.
But
and that's not because Brute is bad. That's where I finish my sentence.
It's also kind of like a class that just we don't. Well, I want to say we don't particularly enjoy that much, but then again, you and I keep playing it in sealed. We don't learn from our lesson.
That's
we keep
true.
playing sealed
It's
brew.
because we wanted to be good.
Yeah, we want it to be. It just has not worked. It just has not worked.
It's not.
We gotta try the Rhino.
It's not
We
brewed.
gotta
It's
try the
us,
Rhino.
obviously.
Yeah. It's not you. It's us. But let us know what cards you're using. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video as well, and subscribe. We do this every other week with various different topics about Commoner. Once we start hitting that Everfest preview season, we might start talking about the new common cards, or the new common cards coming out, what ones look cool, what we think we can play, that sort of thing.
Yep, there's not going to be any.
We already know one. There's already one Guardian one.
That's true.
And I think it is playable in Bravo, even though making it a 7 cost is so cruel.
Yeah.
It is so cruel.
Yeah, the only reason it can be played like...
But it is a good finisher for Bravo, who can't use Glacial Footsteps. Old him doesn't care. Old him sees that card and is like, I've got better already.
Mm-hmm.
This is for the Bravo one, where Bravo's like, can I have Glacial Footsteps? And they're like, we have Glacial Footsteps at home. This is the Glacial Footsteps at home.
Yep.
But, subscribe for more Commoner Blitz content.